I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and to the Greek. I'm Chad Davis, and this is Romans 1:16 Radio. In this segment, let's learn the Hebrew word for the day. The Hebrew word today is selam. It's spelled Sade, Lamed, Mem, and the vowels are Sagol and Sagol. It means image, form, likeness, idol, statue. You get the idea. The selam is not the real thing. It is a representation of a real thing. That's the idea of selam. So it appears in the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, what the Jews call the Tanakh, 34 times. 17 times in Hebrew, and then in the book of Daniel, 17 more times, but this time in Aramaic. In Aramaic, it's spelled the same, Sade, Lamed, Mem, but the vowels are different, Shava and Sari, so it's pronounced Salam. Hebrew, Selam, Aramaic, Salam. Now, in Genesis, it appears 4 times, and it doesn't mean idol. It doesn't mean statue in any case. It's very positive the way that selam is used in the book of Genesis. For instance, God said, let us create man in our own image. There's that word selam, image. So man, Adam, the human being, is not the real God, but he is made to look like God. He is a representative and in the image of God. A little later on, Adam has a son named Seth after his own likeness and image. So in Genesis, there's no connotation of idolatry, nothing bad. It's a very, very positive word in the first book of the Bible. But in the rest of the Hebrew Bible, selam is about idolatry. There are molten idols, there are carved idols, there are the idols in the temple of Baal, and it's always a statue or a fake God that's being worshipped, not the real God. A representation, but not the real thing. So you understand selam and its use in terms of idolatry. Then when you get into Daniel, I gotta get my glasses for this. You get into Daniel chapter 2 through Daniel chapter 7 aren't written in Hebrew, they're written in Aramaic. And the word appears in chapter 2 and in chapter 3 17 times. So it's a really important word for understanding Daniel 2 and Daniel 3. Just to recap, Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2 has a dream and he needs it interpreted. And in the dream, there's this enormous its and its head is gold. And you remember, its chest and arms are silver, and the waist is bronze, and the legs are iron, and the feet are iron also, but they also contain clay. Well, Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, you, King Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold. And so in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar makes a giant statue, a tremendous image, selam, chapter 3. And it's all gold. See, he heard Daniel say, you are the head of gold, and the empires that come after you are going to be lesser than you. He ignores all that, goes and makes a 90-foot statue, an image, a selam, of himself. And he requires every people from every nation, when they hear the music, to bow down and worship at the feet of this image of himself. Wow, that's the use of the word selam that really brings out its meaning in the Hebrew text. And there's a very unusual occurrence and usage in verse 19. At least we've translated it differently than image or statue. So this is the English Standard Version of the Bible, and this is Daniel 3:19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression, there's your word, selam, of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This is my King James Bible, which was the first Bible that was bought for me. My first Bible was a hotel room Bible that my mother's husband brought home to me. But this is one I asked for and was purchased for me when I was a teenager. And in the King James, Daniel chapter 3:19, it says, then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, so in neither one of these cases is it translated an idol, but every time leading up to verse 19, Selim is translated as statue or image, and it means an idol. But this time, the translators chose to make it the expression on Nebuchadnezzar's face. It's not the real emotion of anger, it is just the representation of the emotion of anger. King James says that I've forgotten already, that the form of his visage was changed against them. And I think that means the look on his face as well. And that's a perfectly good translation. There's nothing wrong with those translations. But I want to suggest a little more literal translation, just for argument's sake. And this is my Hebrew Bible. I'm reading from Daniel 3:19. Just 2 words. It's in Aramaic. It's hard for me. Utzlaim anpohi, and the image of his face. Right there, the u at the beginning of Salem means and then Salem is image, anpohi is his face. It sounds like the idol of Nebuchadnezzar's face changed, if you take it that literally. Well, I don't think we legitimately can, although I'm going to bring it up again in a minute, because Selim comes from a root, verbal root, that means to cast a shadow, to cause a representation. And maybe to say a shadow came over Nebuchadnezzar's face would be a way of saying that, his face was darkened with anger. I have to go with what the King James and the ESV say, that basically the look on Nebuchadnezzar's face changed. But entertain with me the possibility that at least one other interpreter thought that the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's face changed. And that reference is, back to my ESV, in Revelation chapter 13, verse 15. You'll recall, that little background, that there were 2 beasts in Revelation 13. One rose up out of the sea and one came up from the land. And the second beast commanded everyone to make an image. Now it's Greek, it's not Selim, but make an image, a statue of the first beast that was slain and allegedly came back to life. And here's the verse 15 that I want to read. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Well, this is a direct memory of Daniel chapter 3, that you have to worship this image of Nebuchadnezzar or be put to death. Here, it's a beast, and there are beasts in Daniel, and that's another discussion. But here we're told really specifically that the second beast gives breath to this statue so that it would have power to speak and then condemn people to death. It doesn't say that it did speak, but this is definitely a very clear case that a statue, an idol that has been made, is given life, given the ability to speak. Maybe John, the apostle who writes this, has Daniel chapter 3 in mind. He certainly does, as he's talking about bowing. Everyone who bows down before this image or they're put to death. Maybe he has in mind these Aramaic words, Utzlaim anpohi, the image of his face. Maybe at least one other interpreter thinks that in the story of Daniel chapter 3, Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, the face of the statue itself, the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I wouldn't bet your eternal destiny on it. It's really not that important. In fact, it's kind of an interpretive pet rock. It doesn't matter what you believe or not about whether the image of the face of the statue changed or it was Nebuchadnezzar. But the fact that the word is used for idolatry every other time in Daniel 2 and 3, referring to a statue, referring to an image every other time, and then suddenly that's the word that the writer chooses to describe what is an expression on Nebuchadnezzar's face. It's a little bit suspect, so enjoy it, and may God richly bless you. Then I heard the voice of the Lord say, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am. sent me.